The Manhattan Project showed what atomic power could do if controlled. The invention of the first atomic weapon was shocking when men saw what it could do. World War II was the reason behind the race to control atomic power. Everyone knew that the country that could control atoms would win the war. Adolf Hitler, the dictator of Germany, and Hideaki Tojo, leader of Japanese military and prime minister, started research on atomic fission but weren't getting very far because they didn't know how to do it. The Japanese bombing on Pearl Harbor made America join the World War, and it made them hurry their progress in harnessing atomic power. Before World War II, Otto Hahn and Lise Meitner, Austrian physicists, discovered fission. The discovery of nuclear fission made countries start to race for the first atomic weapon. In 1939, 2 years before America joined World War II, the United States appointed Leslie Groves, who was an American Army officer, to lead the Manhattan Project. Leslie Groves immediately made J. Robert Oppenheimer the lead physicist and second in command. The Manhattan Project showed the world what atomic power can do. It had some stupendous triumphs. It also had a few horrific tragedies. Even though the Manhattan Project had some terrible tragedies, it turned out beneficial in the end.
The discovery of nuclear fission and fusion started the race for atomic arms. Nuclear fission is the splitting of atoms, whereas nuclear fusion is the combining of atoms. This discovery led to a deeper study of atoms. The deeper study made people realize what atoms could do.
Hitler made a huge mistake that if he didn't make would have made Germany develop the first atomic bomb. The mistake was that Hitler disliked Jews. Germany had many great physicists who were Jews. Some Jewish scientists that left Germany and came to America were Albert Einstein, Leo Szilard, and Edward Teller. Many more great physicists immigrated to America and helped the Americans. Some, like Edward Teller, even stayed in America after World War II and helped create the hydrogen bomb. Albert Einstein, a German physicist with the help of two physicists, Leo Szilard and Eugene Wigner, who helped inflate the Manhattan Project, realized the threat of the Germans building an atomic bomb. Einstein made the famous equation E equals mc squared, which means energy equals mass times speed of light squared. This equation is the law of relativity and the foundation for atomic power.
J. Robert Oppenheimer, an American physicist, discovered that if you push a neutron out of a uranium atom with enough force, it will split the uranium in half. Enrico Fermi was an Italian-American physicist who in 1938 discovered that a pile of uranium could go radioactive if you hold calcium up to it. This pile was later called the Chicago Pile. It was called this because it took place in a Chicago State University stadium. Radioactivity is when an atom becomes unstable. An atom becomes unstable when one of its electrons is donated to another unstable atom. Then the electrons of the uranium will attract to the calcium, and the electrons of the uranium would have to fill in the missing neutrons and go radioactive. The German-controlled Vemork hydroelectric D2O plant developed heavy water, D2O. It is located about 100 miles west from Oslo, Norway. The heavy water reacts and fissils with uranium-235. In uranium-238, however, it captures oxygen neutrons without fissioning. The Gunnerside team was a Norwegian group of men that on February 27th of 1943 were commanded by the Allies to destroy the Vemork plant by blowing it up. They were able to blow it up, and the attempt ended up successful. The Germans needed the plant, so they rebuilt it. A group of British pilots flew military gliders over the Vemork plant to bomb it. All of them but one crashed or got shot. The second mission had failed. Oppenheimer started to recruit physicists to the Los Alamos, New Mexico Atom Bomb Laboratory, which is the main discovery site for the Manhattan Project. As Oppenheimer would sometimes say, we were the biggest group of eggheads. The Manhattan Project was top secret, so what went on in there had to stay there. There were signs warning the physicists not to tell what was happening. Rumors started to spread about what was happening in Los Alamos. Some thought they were making UFOs or even laser weapons. They were really making something more amazing. atomic bombs. Leslie Groves didn't like his position very much and would have rather been out on the battlefield. He was not a physicist, but was in charge of the physicists and the Manhattan Project. He wouldn't do the scientific work, but would tell the group of scientists what would come up next.
Physicists soon found out that there were difficulties in the creation of atomic bombs. Russian spies would link information to the GRU, Soviet military intelligence. Other spies were physicists. They were recruited by Oppenheimer to help in the creation. Having direct contact in the project proved very useful for the Soviets. Klaus Fuchs was a physicist that worked for the Manhattan Project. He reported information to the USSR. The USSR wanted information from the Americans because they were so far behind. Harry Gold was a Russian spy who lived in New York. He gathered information from the other spies to take to the GRU. Theodore Hall, his nickname was Ted, was a physicist for the Manhattan Project. He was recruited to the project when he was only age 19. He was bribed into spying for the Soviets, but was never caught. Keeping the project secret proved hard too. There were signs around Los Alamos to keep the project hushed up. They said things like, "What you see here, what happens here, and what you hear here, stays here." The project was top secret and they could not risk letting outsiders know. Even through all the security measures, they were not able to keep it subdued. Even though they kept it fairly secret, the Russians were the only country to find out, and they kept it to themselves, not telling any other countries, so no one else but the Russians knew until the 2 atomic explosions on Japan.
It had all come down to this. The Trinity test site in New Mexico was where the first atomic bomb was ever tested. It was nicknamed the Gadget. They built a tower out of steel to protect the physicists. How it was made was where TNT was loaded around a plutonium core. They used plutonium instead of uranium because plutonium is cheaper and more radioactive. The TNT would explode and squash the plutonium from all sides, causing a chain reaction. At 5:30 in the morning, July 16th, Mountain Daylight Time, the Gadget exploded. The sand around the tower had turned to radioactive glass. It left a crater of radioactive glass in the desert, about 10 feet deep and 1,100 feet wide. Towns around the Trinity test site could feel the shockwave that the atomic explosion made. When windows cracked on buildings around the area, people wondered what was happening. Leslie Groves then told the citizens that the thing that exploded was a military bunker loaded with explosives. The Gadget exploded between 500 and 150 million degrees Fahrenheit. As one physicist recalled, it was as hot as an oven. The sun is about 10 million degrees Fahrenheit on the surface. The explosion was hotter than the sun.
The war ended in Europe with Germany surrendering, but the Japanese kept fighting. Either the Americans invade Japan and about 6 million Japanese and Americans died, or they used the atomic bombs. Harry S. Truman, the President of the United States during the end of World War II, had the choice to use the bombs. On the way home from the Potsdam Conference in Europe, he signed a paper that said to use the bombs. The physicists hurried and created a bomb nicknamed Little Boy. Little Boy was dropped on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. It was dropped by Colonel Paul Tibbets on August 6, 1945. The blast killed about 90,000 to 140,000 men, women, and children. Then, a second bomb was built. The second bomb, nicknamed Fat Man, was dropped on Nagasaki by Charles Sweeney, a retired pilot, on August 9, 1945, killing about 80,000 people. Fat Man was actually miles off its target and it never touched the ground. Fat Man was more powerful out of the two bombs, but because of this error, it had a lesser effect on Japan. The bombing of these two cities made Japan surrender.
After 5 years of fighting, World War II was finally over.